Hi, I'm Akanksha and welcome to my YouTube channel. So I'm going to be showing you how to make these little Spiderman keychains today. I posted a video of these on my Instagram. Go follow it, by the way. It's at akanksha crochets if you're not following already. And reeled it like really well. I did not expect that. And I got like an insane amount of requests to make a tutorial. So here I am, now giving the people what they want. Like when I made the original keychain, I did not write down the pattern. So I kind of had to like look at it and figure out what I did. So this pattern is slightly different, but honestly I like the shape a lot better. So you guys are getting the new and improved version. If you guys want a written pattern, I'm gonna put a link down in the description for my Ko-fi, and I'll also have a link to my Instagram if you guys want to check that out. I also sell these, so if you can't crochet or if you just don't have time to make these, feel free to DM me on Instagram and I can make one for you. I used a 3.75mm crochet hook, but you can use like a 3mm if you are using like a smaller weight of yarn and you want this to be smaller. You can use a 4mm if that's what you have, whatever works for you around that size range. And then I also have a 3mm because I use that for the eyes to make them a little smaller. And then I used a tapestry needle, or you can use the yarn needle, whatever you prefer. And I also use a pair of scissors to cut the yarn. This is optional, but if you have a stitch marker, I just use a little safety pin, but that's really helpful because this pattern is worked in the round. And then for yarn, I'm using weight for red yarn from by Mainstays. It's an acrylic yarn. And then I also have blue yarn that's like the same type. I also use this like white, or like you can use an off-white for the eyes in the web. This is also weight for. This is Red Heart acrylic yarn. For this one, I made the eyes a little smaller, so I used a weight 3 yarn instead. But for this one, I used the weight 4, so you can see the difference in the size. Since this is like a plush pattern, you're also gonna need either polyfill, or I did use yarn scraps because they're sustainable like that, and it just helps like reduce waste. If you have any questions, feel free to like comment them, DM me on Instagram, whatever. We're gonna start with the legs, and you're either gonna make a magic ring, which is what I'm gonna do, or I'll teach you an alternative method if you don't know how to do a magic ring, which is make a slip knot and chain 4, and then into the first chain, which is the furthest away from your hook, you put a slip stitch, and then you single crochet into this loop. I actually really like magic rings, so I'm going to be doing that. So for round 1, we're going to do 7 single crochets in the magic ring. Now that that's done, we're just gonna close it up. If you do the 4 chain method, then you don't have to close it. It'll already be pretty tightly packed together. For the next 2 rounds, you're just going to go around doing 7 single crochets each. So it's 1 single crochet in each stitch. And what I like to do after this part is you just mark the first stitch with the stitch markers. So we're currently in the last stitch of round 3, stitch right before the stitch marker. So now we're gonna do a color change to blue. If you already have your own method that you know how to do, then just stick with that. You don't need to do what I'm doing. But if you don't know how to color change, this is what works easiest for me, which is just to do a slip knot, attach it, and before you finish this last stitch of round 3, finish it with the blue like yarn, and then tighten the ready. So now you have this loop ready to go for round 4. So rounds 4 through 8, which are all pretty much the same except in blue this time. So it's again going with those 7 single crochets. If the little red yarn, if it's bothering you that it's connected and you feel like it's gonna get tangled, then you can just cut it off. For the first foot, it doesn't really matter. You're gonna have to cut it off anyways. But for the second one, if you do cut it off, just know that you will have to reattach it later on. I'm just gonna push these like ends, like the yarn scraps in. I'm using like the back of my 3mm hook. That way you don't waste the yarn and you can just use it as stuffing. Okay, so the first leg is finished. You can fasten this off. You just cut the yarn. Make sure there's a little bit of excess. You can pull your hook through. You can stuff this with either your polyfill or yarn scraps. You gotta make another, but don't fasten it off this time. I'll see you after you finish that. Okay, so I finished both legs and stuffed them. You can kind of shape them to how, like, they're bent in this, but you can also do that later. The second leg, in the last stitch of it, we're gonna color change again. And starting in round 9, we're going to slip our hook into the next stitch in the other leg, and this is gonna connect the legs together, and we're gonna do a single crochet connection. So we'll just do a single crochet in that stitch. This connects the two legs together. Finish round 9 by single crocheting around both legs, and that should be 14 stitches total. So then for rounds 10 through 11, so it's just 2 rounds, you're just gonna keep going with the red and single crocheting 14 around. Okay, so I'm now in the last stitch of round 11, and instead of completing that stitch, we're going to be color changing again. So for round 12, this is a bit different. Rounds 12 and 13 are the same, so we're gonna single crochet 6 in blue. Once we're at the 6th single crochet, don't complete it, color change to red. For these 2 rows, I would recommend not fastening off your yarn in between because there are quite a few color changes. So now we're gonna do 3 single crochets in red, and the third one, we're not gonna finish it, and we're gonna switch to blue, and then we're gonna finish the row in blue. Should be another 5 single crochets. This is round 12, and then for round 13, we're gonna do the exact same thing. So I'm on the last stitch of row 13, and we're gonna do a color change to red here. What we're gonna do for row 14 is a little different now. We're gonna do some decreases. We're gonna do 3 single crochets. And after these 3 single crochets, we're gonna do 1 decrease. 5 more single crochets. And after these, we're gonna do another decrease. We're gonna do 2 more single crochets. We're done with row 14. You should have 12 stitches in this round. For round 15, we're gonna single crochet and then decrease. And then repeat that until we get to the end of the round. So we'll end up doing it 4 times. And at this point, we can also cut off the blue yarn because we won't be using that anymore. And after row 15, we're not going to fasten this red yarn off yet, but what we can do is stuff this a little more so the body has some stuffing. So this is it after I stuffed the body. Now for round 16, do 8 increases for a total of 16 stitches. Round 17, we're gonna alternate doing a single crochet and then an increase, and we're gonna repeat that 8 times for a total of 24 stitches. After round 17 is done, for rounds 18 through 22, which are the next 5 rounds, you're just gonna do 1 single crochet in each stitch for a total of 24 per round. So after you finish those 5 rounds, for round 23, a single crochet and then decrease. And we're gonna repeat that single crochet decrease pattern 8 times for a total of 16 stitches in the row. Row 24, we're just gonna do 8 decreases all the way around. Now, before we close it up completely, we're just gonna stuff the head with polyfill or yarn scraps. This is our last row, row 25 of the main body of Spider-Man. We're just gonna do 4 decreases. So now that we've kind of decreased our way around, what we can do is just fasten off this, but leave a little bit extra so we can sew and pull this through. There are some like gaps in there. We can just take our tapestry needle or a yarn needle like this, sew up the top like this. Tie a small knot like this, and then thread the yarn through the plush. We can just fasten that off. Next up, we are doing the arms. So for the arms, you again start with red. This is very similar to how the legs are actually. And it's another magic ring. We're gonna again do 7 single crochets. When we're done with our 7 single crochets, we just pull the magic ring shut. For round 2, we're gonna do 7 single crochets. So this is the last stitch of round 3, and we're not going to finish it completely. So bring back the blue, make a slip knot, insert the hook into the slip knot, go through. For round 4, what we're going to do is another 7 single crochets, 1 in each stitch, and we're going to repeat that until we get to round 7. So that's 4 rows of 1 single crochet in each stitch. So we finished the arm, row 7 is done. We can stuff this, but before that we can fasten off. Before fastening off, you need to remember to leave a tail because we have to sew this on, and it's a lot easier if the yarn is attached to the piece. Measure out a little more than what I would need and cut it. And I'm just gonna stuff this, make another one, and do the same. So I finished the two arms. To sew them on, and I sewed mine on like next to this blue part, so it looks like a continuation because this is the front of the Spider-Man, not this. And sew them on like that so it's easier for it to hold the web. Just go in and out between these stitches and the stitches around here. So this is it once I sewed the arms on. The next thing to do is the eyes. For the eyes, I used a much smaller hook. We're gonna start with another magic ring. Then we're gonna start closing up the circle. We're gonna pull it tight. We're not gonna pull it so that the end touches the part where you started. You kind of just want like a half semicircle shape like this. Just chain one and cut the end off. You're gonna make two of these and weave in the ends. And if you don't want to make the eyes, another option is you can just take white felt and just hot glue it onto here. I hot glued the eyes on too. I'm sure if you have more patience, you can sew it. So now that I weaved in both the ends for both eyes, I'm just gonna position them on the face like this, and I'll glue them. Now the eyes are attached, and it's time to make the hanging web portion of this. So I'm gonna just slip stitch. We're gonna chain 60. So now that we've chained 60, we're gonna skip over 40 stitches from the hook. We're just gonna flip stitch. So that creates this little loop for you to hang the Spider-Man on a bag, on your car. After you do that, until you get to the end of this, we're just gonna chain 2 to make the little web pattern, skip 2 stitches, and into the 3rd stitch, we're just gonna slip stitch again. That makes it like a little gap, like a web there. Slip stitch into the last stitch and chain 1 to finish it off. Then we're going to leave a little bit of a tail so we can sew it and fasten off the yarn. Now we've finished all the individual parts of the Spider-Man, and we can just sew them together. So you can start by sewing the arms to this end of the web. Once we're done with that, you can just kind of, how you weave the ends in, just go up the web until we reach like about where we want the legs to attach. and then weave in all the ends, and I'll show you the finished piece. And here's the final Spiderman keychain. So it's very similar to the original. Like I said, I made a couple changes, but I think those actually improved the pattern. If you want more from me, just comment like what type of tutorials you would want. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Thank you for watching, and if you have any questions about the video or the tutorial, feel free to DM me.